Yes, a number of things occurred to me, and I know during our opening preamble, it's kind of interesting that you brought up the fact that you feel right at home here, and that Edmonton feels a little bit like Winnipeg on certain levels. One thing that I applaud, though, having been to Winnipeg, they had a great restaurant called The Storm. I don't know, it was in the Exchange District. Remember?
The Storm.
Yeah,
I don't know.
one of the best raviolis, homemade raviolis I've
I
ever
remember
had.
the Storm.
Remember The Storm? Yeah, it was probably in 98,
Yeah.
99.
And this is weird, I bet you don't know this, but the guys from Green Day, before they were famous, had a relationship with the chef, who's now Brad Moore is now I'm just going off. He's one of Toronto's famous chefs, and that was his first restaurant, and the Green Day guys used to wear shirts saying The Storm on it.
Oh, wicked. Okay, so I'm not the only one who loved The Storm.
You know, I mean, there is a culture there, and I don't know what it's like in Edmonton, but when I was growing up in Winnipeg, because now I live in Toronto, it was all a house party. There's nobody. You wouldn't go to a bar.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go out. But in Toronto, like, everybody goes out. There's this idea that you kind of make it yourself in Winnipeg. If you want something to be fun, you get a bunch of people together and you make something.
Brilliant. And you made a film. Well, you've made many films through your illustrious career. And this film, I hadn't seen the film prior to our discussion, but there was something that was a little Capra-esque about it, I have to say. Because at its core, it was really about familial relationships. And we'll toss it over to the audience to ask questions in just one moment. But my question is, whatever inspired that? Was it personal experience that you drew on to create this kernel of family?
Well, I mean, it is a really interesting question because, of course, as you saw in the end credits, I made a short film, and then Jonas adapted it to a feature.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most interesting experiences for me going from the short to the feature was that the short was very much based on I didn't realize it when I was writing it, but my relationship with my dad. And very much I associated myself with the girl. And I had this kind of hero dad. And so in the short, he's very much a hero dad. And Jonas, I think, took that and Jonas didn't have that same relationship with my dad. And so he changed it into something else that then made me have to sort of renegotiate a little bit my relationship with those characters in that story. And it became quite a different beast. But it really started there, right, with that very familial kind of semi-autobiographical exploration.
And I think it was Sean that pointed out to me, you've met my dad maybe?
Yes.
A few times, but pointed out to me way late into the process, in fact, maybe even not until we were on the festival circuit, that he felt that I took my own experience from my relationship with my father and somehow injected that. And that had never even occurred to me. All that had occurred to me was that my father played cards and loved cards and taught me how to play cards when I was young, and this was a thing that I had seen him do, and that there was this weird Winnipeg Jewish poker community that was like having games at the back of Chinese restaurants, and that this was something that as a kid I thought was this mysterious sort of world that I didn't understand and I didn't know much about. So I really, if that was happening, it was a subconscious thing, which I guess happens in writing a lot and in art. And so I guess that's there.
Yeah, and certainly the familial relationships and the whole fact that there are skeletons that are in the closet that eventually have to be exorcised and excised from the building. That's very Capra-esque, I thought, actually, when you find out more about the mother's story as it goes along.
That's a very flattering comparison.
Very flattering.
Extraordinarily touching by the end of the film. Questions out there. Sorry for hogging the floor thus far. Put up your hand right there in the back.
How did Kevin Pollak become involved in the project, and where did the two of you go to high school?
I went to high school at Grant Park High School in Winnipeg.
And I went to St. Paul's. Yay!
Wow. Any Grant
Winnipegger
Parkers? Go Pirates. And Kevin Pollak was... he and I was lucky enough 10 years ago to be cast in a film with Kevin Pollak, another Canadian feature, also shot in Winnipeg, called 7 Times Lucky, where we played con artists. And his character mentored my character in that film. And working with him was one of these like career moments that like defined who who I was and what I wanted to do as an actor. And he really took me under his wing, and he was amazing to me, and we got along well. And 10 years later, we were ready to cast this, and it was Sean's idea to cast Kevin, because the role was originally written as much younger. And he said, what about your buddy Kevin Pollak? And I said, well, it's been a long time, but it's perfect casting. Let me see if I can get him. So I called him on his cell phone, and he answered the phone. And I said, hey, Kevin, it's Jonas Chernick. You remember me? And he said, no. And then that's funny. Every time I say it, I get a laugh. And then once I convinced him reminded him who I was, he said, send me the script, and he read it, and he loved it. And he was very excited to get on a Skype call with Sean and I. We thought, okay, he's going to have 20 pages of notes, which is great. He's a genius. He's a great comedian. He's a great writer. He's going to have great notes. He's going to make it better. And he was like, okay, guys, I have 4 notes. They're all poker notes. So in the first poker game, on the flop, when there's the queen and the king, it should be what if it's a 5, and then the odds, and we were like, yeah, great. And we're like, but what about like your character and the dialogue? Do you want to rewrite the dialogue because you're so funny? And he's like, no, that's all great. Just leave that. That's all.
No,
great.
and there was one, I don't know if you remember this. There's one where he was like, there's that scene where I take the dog and we have the confrontation at the door, and you say, I should have won. I almost won, or whatever the line is. And he's like, there was such a small chance. And he says, the chance was, and he lays it out in a number.
He gave us the actual odds of
He's like,
losing
this is the actual odds. But then what happened was we shot the wide shot, and we go to do his close-up, and he's like, wait, no, I made a mistake. That's not the number.
Yeah. And then he got on the phone with Sam Levine, this poker expert from LA, and he was the whole thing. And then but he was really into it. He was like, he was totally on board, and obviously he's a legend. So having him in the movie really helps us get it seen, I think, and he's great.
And just speaking to that, you talk about casting, and you set the bar way up here, being a Canadian independent filmmaker, and you managed to score on many levels.
Yeah.
Joey King, for example, is remarkable in the picture.
Yes, it really has no business being in our very small, inexpensive movie.
She went off our movie and went to shoot Independence Day 2, which is the sequel to like the 3rd highest grossing movie of all time.
So how did you do that? How did you get her?
Magic.
People like that.
Magic. We just, I think, called her agent, right?
Yeah, with Joey, I've been tracking her, watching her and everything from, Crazy Stupid Love to Ramona and Beezus to White House Down, The Conjuring, Oz the Great and Powerful, Dark Knight Rises, Fargo. And just when she got old enough, I was like, wait, because I was trying to get the movie financed, and then as the movie starting to get financed, I'm getting close, and Joey King is just about 15, and she turned 15 the week before we shot it, but we just sent it to her agent, and she read it and said yes. Right away.
Brilliant.
There was no
great bit of serendipity.
drama there.
Questions, dramatic or not? Love to see what you have. Just put up your hand, because I can't. It's hard to see out there.
I can't see anything.
And please don't be shy.
They may all have their hands up
Yeah.
for
Oh,
all I
sorry,
know.
in the back there. Yes.
Quick question. I apologize for not having seen your short ahead of time, but what was the inspiration for the blindness plot?
The blindness plot. Well, it was. I was just talking about this earlier tonight. I was talking to an RV dealer, and the RV dealer we were talking about his job and what he did, and he was saying that one of his favorite kind of rentals is what he called a last wish rental, and that he had a lot of people who come to his place, and I guess it's kind of common with RV dealerships, and they've just been diagnosed with cancer, or they're going blind, or something else that is kind of the end of something. And so they rent an RV with their wife or their father or their son or somebody close to them, and they do that trip that they've always wanted to do their whole lives. And I just was tremendously touched by that when I heard that, and especially when he said blindness, and I started to think about, wow, what would it be like if someone I knew, or if it was me and we were about to lose our sight, and what would we go and see? And it kind of started there. That's where the idea came from. And then, of course, as a wanky director, I got very excited about all the different ways that I could play with the idea of blindness and vision and seeing on the screen, and using layers of dirty glass and looking around corners, and how I could sort of go into weird artistic circles with my cinematographer on that. And so that's kind of where it went.
Other questions down in the front?
Jonas, you were in 2 films that I've seen at festivals this year.
They're stalking me.
We'll see you after for beers.
Oh, God.
And,
Please help.
no, that's why they give
Oh, yeah.
So, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So, what was it like working with the two directors, with Jeremy and this one?
Did everybody hear the question? Oh, then my comments made no sense. She said that she pointed out that I was acting in another film that played here at the festival, and she wanted to know what it was like working with the two directors, Sean, and then the director Jeremy Lalonde, who directed a film called How to Plan an Orgy in a Small Town.
That's a catchy title, if
Thank
ever
you.
there was one.
It had nothing to do with it. It's a great title, though. It was great. It was great. I shot the films back to back, and super fun going from this material to a sex comedy. But also the real joy was on this film, I'm also the producer. So as you can't even begin to imagine the stressful, headachy kind of putting out fires craziness of it all. And then coming back to Toronto and just being a regular actor, which is what I love to do, was a joy. But they're very different directors, actually. The other one was a great experience as well. I love Jeremy and I love that film. But there's something kind of unique and special about working with Sean, just because we're collaborators over many years and we're good friends, and there's a different level of communication. We have a shorthand that often doesn't even, we can communicate without telepathically. And I'll be on set and he'll go, cut, he'll come running over and he'll be like, you want it? And I'll be like, oh, he'll be like that, yeah, but you got it. And he'll run away and I'll just know what we meant. It's like, so that for me, that's kind of, there's nothing like that. It's really special.
Is there, I know there are a couple more questions there, and we'll wrap it up pretty soon. Is there a character, an actor that you modeled this character on, for example?
No, no, I can't even pull one out of,
Is that right?
out of my ass right now. I didn't. I can't think of anything that I pulled it from. I'm sure I'm stealing from like a dozen of my favorite actors and performances, but nothing that I looked at. And I think one of the things that interests Sean and I in the films that we make together all reflect this, is that we're really interested in telling stories about a protagonist who's not just plain likable, who's challenging, who makes difficult choices. We really like the idea of introducing a character who's very flawed, and then trying to earn his redemption and the audience's sympathy throughout the film. I think on this one we pushed it like maybe the furthest we've ever pushed it, as far as I think it's very late in the movie when if you ever redeem him or find my character, if you ever forgive him or sympathize with him, it's very late in the film, if ever. And so we like that idea. And so I think I like to look at films and characters like that, because I just find that more interesting and more challenging as a storyteller.
Yeah, and I found the Jonah character every once in a while reminded me of a younger kind of Woody Allen-esque
I like
kind
that.
of somebody who could make wry observations, self-deprecating, intelligent, but cannot see the forest for the trees. Doesn't really understand his place in this world, and doesn't revel in the naivete. Just wanders around a little
I'll take
bit.
that.
To
I
make
like
the
that
Franz Capra
comparison.
and
Right,
Woody Allen.
observations.
You do all right.
Not bad.
Out there, just put up your hand once again. Over in the corner. Yeah.
I'm curious about what you're ending. And in the end, I'm wondering, not knowing the short, when you set out to write the feature, did you know your ending when you were writing the road trip to where it was going to conclude, or did you bounce around different ideas about the very conclusion?
The only thing that I knew was the ending when I started writing the script. All I knew was that by the time they reach the rocks, by the time they reach their destination, they will have resolved some of their conflict and their turmoil and begun a process of healing, and that in that moment the Northern Lights would appear, and that he would say what he said, "Isn't it? Look, didn't I tell you?" And she would at that moment go blind and say, "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." And the reason I knew that ending is because that was the ending of the short. And when Sean pitched me on the short even, and gave me the 4-sentence description of it and ended with that, I was crying. 4 sentences, he made me cry. I was like, that's just a perfect, beautiful ending. And that's why I wanted to turn it into a feature, because I just felt that ending was so lyrical and perfect. And and complicated and yet satisfying, but not in the way that you were expecting it to be. I just thought that's the perfect ending. So it's the first time as a writer that I've ever written a script or a story backwards, reverse engineered, knowing that this is where we need to go. Now, what's the best way, the most interesting, compelling way to take us there? And so I was able to construct everything in reverse engineer it all.
Is your question about the choice that the characters make, or about the visual way that it's presented?
No, just exactly what you said. Yeah, I was wondering the writing process.
But the reason Sean chimed in is because, of course, then there was an infinite number of ways that could be represented visually. And, of course, I always anticipated that the film would end with the northern lights up in the sky over us. And that is where Sean's creative hand came in and made it way better than what I would have done.
On that note, Sean, I would ask you, as director, et cetera, did you co-write it or no? Did you write it and then?
No, I wrote the short, obviously, and then Jonas wrote the feature, and then I kind of served as a story editor. So he would bounce drafts off me, and I would say, try this, try that, and somebody would try, and somebody wouldn't.
And then my secondary question would be a quick one, is did you ever question his ending, call it, say, and look for options?
In
You're on board with the ending, and then it was the journey.
in terms of the blackness, you mean?
Sorry?
In terms of the way it was visually shown, just like black screen?
Yeah, just the final line.
Yeah, the final lines we were always gonna keep. There wasn't a lot of, but we do a process whenever we make a film of screening it for test audiences, like a lot of test audiences, almost weekly when we're in picture editing, and trying different things, right? So we tried a couple of different versions visually of the ending, because I thought black is the best way to end it in my books, but maybe I'm wrong. That did happen once, 1981. I recall. And so we tried a couple of different endings and screened them for a couple of different groups, and then sort of, took their feedback and decided that this was the best way to go.
Questions right there.
I know personally from experience that the aurora borealis can be healing for people. I'm just wondering if you have any weird or interesting experiences or know of any with the northern.
The question was, do we have any weird experiences with the Northern Lights personally?
I mean, aside from there's a hotel in Yellowknife that has glass ceilings.
That's right.
Right,
There is,
and
yeah.
apparently I've heard it's because there are groups in Asia that believe that if you conceive a child under the Northern Lights, it will be a blessed child. And to the extent that a hotel will build some rooms with glass ceilings. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? We'll wrap it up here momentarily. One more on the top there. Sorry, waving your hands. Yeah.
So you had mentioned that you felt you were really lucky to get big names attached to the film, and that typically is kind of one of the ways you get the ball rolling on making something. Do you want to comment on the pros or cons of that in the industry?
How much time do we have? It's a double-edged sword. It's a paradox. It keeps me up at night. The business side of me as the producer totally gets it. I understand it. It makes sense to me. The artist side of me hates it, obviously, because you just want to tell the story as best you can, and that doesn't necessarily necessitate a big-name actor. So I'm back and forth on it. I can't really give you I'm still figuring that out. I'm very happy. In this case, we were very, very lucky that the two stars we have in the movie were literally the two perfect people for those roles. I've had other experiences where they were not.
At the same time, we didn't finance this movie with those stars, right? We had different stars in those roles that we used to finance the movie. And I mean, ultimately, there is a thing, as I'm sure many people know, where you can go to a distributor in Canada like E1 or some other distributor and say, I have this movie that I want you guys to distribute. And their first question is, who are you going to put in it? And, basically they're saying, if you can go and get Angelina Jolie, we're in, right? To which you respond, if I have Angelina Jolie, I'm not going to give it to E1.
I wouldn't be here
Yeah, I
if
wouldn't be-
Angelina Jolie wanted
Totally.
to be in the movie.
But I mean, there is that
Going
thing
back to
of,
the poker game.
yeah,
again.
distributors just want a vehicle for a big star,
Yeah.
because it's easier for them to sell. And as Jonas is saying, Adam McGoyan once told me that he has a line that he gives with distributors when they ask that question. They say, if you have stars, we'll distribute it, and if not, then we won't. Where he says, okay, let's play this game that you have to play where you send the script out to a bunch of actors and they sort of one by one refuse your script or the amount of money that you're paying. And Adam told me that he tells distributors, let's play that for a certain amount of time, but after that time, if we don't find anybody, then I'm just going to cast the actors that I want and you guys have to be on board. Yay or nay right now, right? And so then they commit to...
Well, Adam can get away with that.
Yeah, exactly.
I say that to them, they're like, see ya.
Yeah, totally.
Other questions? One more? We'll take one more. Sorry, I can't see you out there again. Put up your hand, please. Yes.
So there was a lot of driving scenes in that. Was that just the same stretch of road most of the time, or did you guys actually go?
It's a good question.
It is a good question. We did a whole bunch of driving in this movie. I mean, before the show started, I bought that terrible 1989 Honda, which actually I guess isn't so terrible because we drove it all the way up to Thompson, and it survived. And we hired a guy because it was just me and the camera guys, and we hired a stunt double who was also an auto mechanic. So he got the gig right away. He put on a Jonas Chernick wig, and he got behind and we had a horrible
mannequin.
It was Winnipeg, so we needed a mannequin to be the daughter, and because it's Winnipeg, everyone just makes zombie. We had a zombie mannequin, this horrible burned face. Anyway, and then we put a Joey wig. Anyway, so we did that 5-day trip. We went all the way up and came all the way down, me and camera guys, and we just got the wide shots of the car driving into all those towns. And then the close-up stuff of the car, 90% of it was done at a park in Winnipeg called Birds Hill Park that has a big circle that probably takes 15 minutes to drive around, and it has some prairie and has some forest and it has some like water and coniferous trees, and you can kind of do a circle and get, you know, the best of Manitoba landscapes in 15 minutes. That answers your question? Yeah. Cool.
Thank you. I would like to thank these guys, Sean and Jonas, for bringing the film Borealis to the Edmonton International Film Festival. Still lots more films to go.
Thank you.
Program. And thanks, guys.